Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience podcast. Mike has over 31 years experience in real estate, finance, and investing. He's passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
So what can you expect from the Mike Litton Experience? You can expect stories that will inspire, motivate, advice that will sharpen your focus, and expert information on real estate, finance, and market conditions.
Yeah, but that's what they used to do. And so I'm with nothing, and I'm unloading toilet paper off a railroad car at $2.14 an hour in a white trench coat and patent leather shoes. And the guy said, "You don't look like you belong here." I said, "I'm not staying long. This is not right." But then ask, what we teach in the Ask book, I'll just transition gently. We teach ask yourself, ask others, ask God, to the bridge from your dreams to your destiny, because everyone has a destiny.
Yeah.
Back to what you said about kids. What I said about my grandson, ask him, what's your destiny, basically? And he gave me his goals.
Yeah.
How many times when you were a kid, a teenager, were you asked, what's your destiny? No, they said,
Never.
What job do you want, maybe? Or maybe, do you want to go to college if your parents were educated?
Actually, they didn't ask me that either. So they literally told me what I was going to do.
What did they tell you?
Well, they told me I was going to be an attorney, and that didn't end up happening. I ended up being one of the best debaters in the country. So I was on the debate team. I was full on, I was literally blazing my trail, so to speak, and greasing the skids to law school and all that. But I ended up getting to a place to where I didn't want a degree in communications, which I know sounds really strange now. I wanted a degree in business. And in order to stay in debate and stay going forward with it, you had to full ride scholarships, that kind of thing. You had to major in communications. It wasn't a choice. And I found out later is because they didn't go to class all the time. And the communications professors were a lot involved in the debate program. And so they would spend time rehearsing and not going to class. That wasn't my thing. That wasn't what I wanted to do. And so I ended up choosing to bow out of debate and just stay in business school. So, and then, life got in the way, and there you go. But they never really asked me. So that's sort of where I'm going with this, is this power of questions thing and the idea of ask. And the reason why I admire you as much as I do is you do care enough to ask. And that's something that I want parents to understand, and I want grandparents to understand, and I want them to embrace it, right? Because it really is an opportunity. So a couple of years ago, 4 years ago now, my son was in his last year of college, getting his bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering and a minor in biomedical engineering. And I asked him about the minor, and he said, "Well, Dad," he said, "I want what I do for a living to help people." I mean, what a sweetheart. This kid is just amazing, right? He's 26, okay? He's in his senior year. We go up to him because my mother had a conversation with him, and she thought he sounded homesick. So we brought home to him because he wasn't going to be able to come home for summer break because he had an internship. So we go up, and I said, "Michael, I'd like to take you to breakfast." So I take him to breakfast, just he and I. And we sat down, and I said, "Listen, I've been wanting to ask you this, but if there were no limitations, money was not an object, perfect world, what would you do after you graduated from college?" He said, "I'd invest in real estate with you." Now, here's what you need to know. I ran a very large real estate office for the entire time they were growing up out of my house. And they absolutely told me, both of them, that they wanted nothing to do with real estate when they grew up. And so you could have knocked me over with a feather. And so I asked him, I said, it was one of my most vulnerable moments, Mark. I'm not joking. I literally asked him, I said, "So can I ask you why?" And he said, "Dad," he said, "you're never as magnetic as you are when you talk about investing in real estate." He said, "I don't know anybody on this planet with a pulse that wouldn't want to work with you." That's my kid. Okay. But these are the kinds of questions that I'm trying to compel and inspire parents and grandparents to ask their kids. and their grandkids, right? Because you will not believe what you'll find if you just ask. And I told my kids, I said, you need to take a piece of paper and you need to write out stay in curiosity at the top and stay out of judgment at the bottom, and put it up wherever you work all day. So you look at it every day.
Wow. First of all, you got to live in curiosity. I agree with that. And then
You do.
I just want to go to the highest asker on the planet. Like I've told you, I'm a scholar in Elon Musk and all of his companies, and investor too. So I got to put, just like anyone else can invest, like stockholder. And I've never met him, but what he asks every kid is the same question. He said, I don't care what your education is or anything. Tell me in 3 pages the biggest problem that you've ever solved. Now, all the people that are in Washington under his little thing called DOGE, which is do only good everywhere. I don't know if you know his acronym, but that's his acronym. I mean, everyone knows the word, but they don't know what his personal acronym is. That's his personal acronym. And he said, all these kids, the 20 of them that he's got, are finding out there's no gold at Fort Knox or whatever they're finding out, which is not okay with me. Right. And I know who stole it, and so do you probably. But the point is, and for the people listening, they can go ask the question themselves. It's going to be illuminating, which is what mind is illumination, right?
Yeah.
And realization is. Remember, I said there's 7 parts to it, but I just want to open up loops and then close them before we're done in 6 or 8 hours. Sure. You're going 6 or 8 hours. What the hell are these 2 guys with M names to it? But isn't that cool? What is the biggest problem you've solved? Because every kid should solve. I've solved a lot of problems because my parents they didn't have time. They were working and mothering and fathering and fathering, just trying to put a roof over our head and pay the bills.
Right.
The Depression, they knew hardship.
Yeah.
Didn't want that twice.
Yeah, exactly. So one of the things that I told him was, I said, listen, put it up in front of where you work, stay in curiosity, stay out of judgment. Okay. Because, and this 14-year-old kid that I'm working with, Mark, I told him, I said, it doesn't matter what you tell me. I'm not going to judge you. I'm not going to judge you. I'm going to stay curious. I'm going to ask you a lot of questions, right? When I sat down with him at the very first time I met him with his family at the table, I got into the 3rd question with him and he said, wait. And he turned to them and he goes, what am I doing here? What's going on? Why is this happening? Almost like he's being ambushed, right? Well, nobody had ever asked him. Nobody had ever asked him any questions. And so I'm asking him, are you happy where you are? How do we get you from where you are now to where you will be happy? Right? And he's looking at me like I'm talking Martian. Okay. And I'm literally, right? And now this kid is putting together a plan, literally in writing, that he's going to propose to his mother, present to his mother, about how he gets from here, where he's unhappy, where he is now, to where he's going to be happy. Okay. But we're pulling it out of him. You got to talk with your kids. You got to ask, right? And the best way to do it is to just ask them questions and listen to what they say. See, today, I think conversation for young people today is, I'm talking and you're listening, but you're thinking about what you're going to say next. That's a debate. A conversation is, I'm talking, you're listening, or you're talking and I'm listening to what it is that you're saying. And I may ask you about what you just said, right? That's a conversation. That's active listening. Anyway.
I want to help you with the book just because you're flashing it so well. I think you need to do questions at every age group, whether 3 to 5 years old, 13 to 15, each one of those. Because just a simple one, like, are you happy? Like, I'm really happy doing this interview with you. I'm happy to know that this interview is going to be long lived. In the book business, it's called a long tail.
Yeah.
Back to my 1 Minute Millionaire, somebody in France just bought it for a whole lot of thing. And I go, gosh, that's 20 years. What the heck are you doing buying it now? It should have been French 20 years ago, but irrelevant. The point is, my agent wrote us and I said, yeah, sell it immediately.
Yeah.
I thought it was already in French. I didn't know.
That's awesome.
Life is all about questions, because one of the questions was, I wanted to educate uneducated humanity, my 10 goals, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we couldn't do it before.
Yeah.
But let me tell you how it comes in based on your curiosity. I told you that The Chosen has now been bought. I don't know why my phone's ringing. I got it totally off. I apologize. Anyhow, is the Chosen, which is now been bought by Prime, has had the guys with Hobby Lobby who did Museum of the Bible,
Yeah.
the Greens, who we just had dinner with a little bit ago. They've done a thing called comeandsee.net where they're taking that movie and they're putting it in 600 languages that are available for the first time thanks to AI. Well, of course, I talked to them about, can we do that with our books? Because I want, back to like the John Reinhardt model,
Mm-hmm.
I want everybody everywhere to have it. Now you say, well, isn't that available? And it's, I go, I apologize. Isn't that available? No, it's not, because I'm with 8 houses because I've been profoundly prolific, right?
Mm-hmm.
Random House, all the big houses, and they're all really good to me. I'm not complaining, but they think 17% of the world population, 8 billion people, is good. I said, no, no, no. I want books available to 8 billion people. I don't care that they speak Hindi or Telugu or Kannadiese or languages you never heard of. That is all irrelevant to me.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I love it. That's cool. So after Southern Illinois University,
Right.
you go to Boulder and you're teaching at University of Colorado, and you get
Right.
into the dome business. And this is the business that you end up losing to bankruptcy.
Right.
You mentioned that you're building domes. Can you talk about that for a second? What specifically was it that you were, I mean, they're domes, but what were you doing with them? Were they a new way of building houses?
Yeah. Oh, the phone, I promise you, is totally dead and off. So somehow my computer's ringing. I can't tell you what's happening. Anyhow, we built the Wall Street Racquet Club. We did botanical gardens, aviaries. We did houses, and those were made out of wood. And we were just having the most spectacular success.
Yeah.
I mean, remember, I'm 26 or 27 years old, and I'm eating at top of the Sixes in New York and top of the World Trade Center on top of the world, and just I think I've arrived, and all of a sudden one day the oil embargo hits, and I'm buying from a company I didn't like then, I don't like now, called Monsanto, and we're $40,000 a month just of one product called plastic, PC, and they said, you're not big enough, and I go, big enough for what? Because it didn't dawn on me that the oil embargo was going to stop them from serving me. First of all, we never had any oil shortage, as you know.
Right.
The president said we got more liquid gold in the ground and just opened up 650 million acres to drill, baby, drill. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm really keen on that because energy determines the future. And we live in the headquarters here in Arizona of the data mining, because we got lots of water. We're in the desert with unlimited water, unlimited sunshine. So Taiwanese Semiconductor, NVIDIA, everybody is coming here. So I'm in heaven again with just because I'm interviewing all these people for my books and the books they're going to write with my company, Mark Victor Hansen Library.com. We're in the most exciting time in history under one circumstance, if you're awake.
Yeah.
Getting bankrupt depressed me for a while, but then luckily the stuff that we ultimately wrote the Ask book with, Ask Yourself, Ask Others, Ask God, I'm sleeping out in a sleeping bag in front of another guy's room in Hicksville, Long Island, New York. So you can see I was no longer styling and profiling. Everything had been taken from me, and I'm upside down looking up, trying to touch bottom. And I say to the guys, I pray to God, and I ask God, what do you want me to do? And God doesn't answer straight up. He says, what do you want to do? Back to what you do with every kid you ask.
Yeah.
I want to talk to people that care about things that matter, that would make a life transformative difference. Next morning at breakfast with my 3 roommates, I say, you guys know somebody young, not a cotton top of white hair like me, not a Broadway star because we're in New York, not a celebrity, not a doctor, not a lawyer, but somebody speaking and making a living. And they said, yeah, this kid's 10 or 20 years older than you, but he's out here in Hauppauge. Here's my ticket in real estate. You go hear Chip Collins, which he only worked the New York thing. Barbara Corcoran was one of his best friends and made her a billionaire and all that. I went and heard him. Remember, interest rate in 74 is 18%.
Yeah.
So
really high. Yeah, no kidding.
Right. And he comes into a despondent, disconsolate, depressed audience, and in 3 hours, he wowed them. I go up to him, and this is hard to believe for some of your listeners, but there's no such thing as a microphone or a lavalier yet.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't exist in 74. Today they're ubiquitous, just like cell phones. What do you mean you had a phone connected to the wall, Mike? Are you nuts? You didn't know any better?
You have a really long cord.
Right. And then you'd trip on it. I remember
Right.
Right. And they'd go to the kitchen with it and every other place. Anyhow, so I go up to him at the end, and his voice is all burned out, hoarse. I say, Chip, I want to take you to lunch. I'd like to ask you to lunch. What do you want, kid? I said, I want to do I'm sorry, I don't have a gravelly voice. I said, I want to do what you do. He said, you don't want to do this, kid. Go and get a real job. I said, let me determine. Anyhow, he told me, I asked, and he said, look, stay out of real estate because I own this market in 5 boroughs of New York. I'll teach you how to do it and stay out of my market. Do life insurance. It's a bottomless pit. Well, I knock on 10 doors. The 10th guy at 6:30 at night, I'm parked my little beat up Volkswagen 2 blocks away, is a lovely guy. There's nobody in the office except him. And I knew he owned the place because his Cadillac was sitting out in front. That's a big car at that age. Anyhow, it was just beyond exciting. We got together. I said, do you have seminars? Here's what I do. I said, do you want to cut the check or have your secretary cut it? Well, there's no secretary there. I'm a big boy. I can cut it. And he said, here, kid, here's the directory to everybody at Metropolitan. I'm the number one guy in the number one life insurance company in the world, Big Tony. You tell them if they don't hire you, tell them call Big Tony. I had my golden ticket to ride. Man, I called up so fast. I was doing 4 talks a day. Now, only Tony Robbins and I were so nuts to do 4 talks a day. But then people would say, well, your story, you're the best storyteller I've ever heard. Do you have it in a book? And said, no. So I immediately did a book called Stand Up, Speak Out, and Win. It cost us $1 back in the prehistoric days. And when dinosaurs were on the earth, I sold 20,000 copies in 1 year times $10. That's 200 grand. That's like 2 million today. I was smoking.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, you were.
Yeah. We had a ball. I probably over answered your question. I hope
You're doing great. You're doing great. What's the single most important thing you learned from the bankruptcy?
The best line in the Old Testament is for the last line in Genesis 50:20. And what it says is, what you meant for my harm, God meant for my good.
Yeah.
I was in the wrong place. I was not on my destiny. I'm on my destiny code. Now I only can do 4 things. Most people only do 1, but you really get good. I'm a serial entrepreneur, but I got really good at speaking and won a lot of awards, made a lot of money. Then I became really good at the book business, outselling everybody. And the reason 144 people turned down Mark and Jack is Mark's fault. I wrote this wow of a business plan after I interviewed everybody, but the top line was a killer. If you'd been the head of Random House who was reading this and said, I'm going to sell 1 billion books, you'd go, guys, get Tinker Toys. Nobody's ever sold 1 billion books. It's just like our publisher said, no, you can't do the Bible. I said, well, sign this thing. I'm going to go do the Bible. And I did the Bible, and we sold like 70,000 a week at Walmart, because I wanted to do a book that didn't scare people.
Right.
No pun intended. The Bible was never meant to be intimidating or fear generating or any of that. But anyway, we sold a gazillion of these, and happily so, and still do. I mean, because I believe whatever business you get in, you want to have a long tail. You want to have it so people start buying it and keep buying it and tell their grandkids and nephews and nieces, like Mark Twain and whoever you want to put it off of.
Exactly. So the most important lesson you learned from the bankruptcy was you just were in the wrong space. You were you were trying to basically do something that you were just not, it was not in line with your calling.
No, I was trying to be Bucky Fuller rather than be Mark Victor Hansen.
Right.
I really am good at speaking and writing, now at book publishing. And then I own a couple of businesses like Newcom and that are going to change people. So everybody has a sleep problem. And we do vibration. The top neuroscientists in the world, Jim Poole and I are best friends. I'll send you a link to the video. And you want to do an interview with him too.
I've done an interview with him. He's been on our podcast.
Oh, Jim has. Okay.
Jim has been on our podcast. I'm actually I'm a Newcom proponent, and I use it. I just used it last night. I slept 9 hours. And I was having the toughest time sleeping. I was getting maybe 5-6 hours if I was lucky. I slept 9 hours last night. I'm averaging 8.5 a night. Absolutely incredible.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about this serial entrepreneurship, not parallel. They do it in sequence because I'm well connected. So these guys say, we need you to do this, and I can't. In your business, we've started a company. I'm an owner with Brandon Barnum called HOA.com, which everybody has trouble with homeowner. So what we're doing is we're doing Uber for homeowners, where we get to judge the association and they get to judge us.
Yeah.
Because I own a lot of real estate in 6 states, I think it is right now. That changes once in a while. We sell and buy stuff and move stuff and land too. So, but one of our homeowner associations wasn't doing well, and I called up Brent. I said, we got to excommunicate these guys. I'm voting against them because they're not calling us back after 3 days. We got somebody that doesn't have water turned on. Now, it doesn't sound like a big deal, but you can't turn it on without the HOA working.
Yeah.
Well, somebody at the HOA, I don't care if they're sick. If they're sick, they ought to have somebody else, right? And they get to judge the client because I want to know the client that's going to steal, that's going to wreck the place. It's going to, you know, all the problems that can go wrong in real estate like I do. And you know, I should say that's one of our other art forms, but we're good at it and we love it. And the other thing, let's do that art form. Remember, one of my goals was house on house humanity. Back to Alon, he is making houses called tiny houses with his robots called Optimus, which is he said we'll do 100,000 this year, 1 million and 10 million and 100 million. Everyone will have one at $10,000 each within 5 years. He's going to build the houses for all the people that got burned out north of you in California. 60 square miles of burned out, which was not an accident. It was just terrible, tragic, horrific leadership that deserves to go to prison.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I totally agree with that. So you're asking about the HOA. The biggest thing with HOAs is, and it's not the HOA, it's the management company that you're talking about, right? The HOA management companies are going through a real issue right now, and it's been building for years. But basically, homeowners don't want to pay more for homeowners association dues.
Bingo.
But they want the same services that they got before. And it's not less expensive now to do business. So HOA management companies need to get to a place to where they learn efficiencies. One of the biggest efficiencies they need to learn specifically is customer service. Because they're absolutely, not all of them, but many of them are terrible at customer service. What people don't understand is it starts with the homeowner. It starts with who the customer is. And if you make sure as a homeowners association management company that you communicate with your homeowners, you can figure out what the homeowners need. And then you can take everything and go backwards from there. So if you sit down and figure out what's most important, and you have to ask them, okay? Again, back to the care enough to ask, right? You have to ask them, but you have to have a conversation with them about what would be, if we were going to create the perfect HOA management company, what would that look like? Let them tell you, because what's going to happen is you're going to start seeing trends. You're going to see 60, 70, 80% of them tell you the exact same things, like the top three items, right? Then you know exactly what it is you need to deliver. Then you have to go back and figure out what's that going to cost. Okay. And you have to ask them, if we provided you with these top three things that you want, would you be willing to pay for it? Okay. And as an HOA management company, you have to be really good at costing things. You have to figure out how to budget, and you have to figure out how to efficiently deliver items that nobody else can really deliver for that number. Does that make sense?
By the way, you and I are 100% on the same page, and Brandon Barnum, who's a genius, and his wife is third hire at Oracle. So we got the right people thinking this through. We figured out how 80% of that can be done electronically. So it's not a problem.
Yeah.
And it gets solved the same time. You click it in, it clicks out, and it has answers and all that, and it gets everything done like that, because I want everybody satisfied.
Yeah.
And that's the micro, that's the specific. And the reason I brought that up is because the macro is, every one of you is listening. If you take off the blinders, like Mike said earlier, and just throw them away, you've got some electronic business that is software based that'll make you a fortune. And I don't care if you're 102 years old. And by the way, we got a doctor here who's still working at 102 years old. We go to a birthday party every year. Gladys, she's in, you can see her on X and all that. The point I'm making is you should never quit working, because you're here for 3 C's. You're here to create, and I'm talking about creating new software, and whatever problem you have, 8 billion people probably have the same problem.
Yep.
So you're here to create, to contribute, and to be charitable. It's really simple. 3 C's.
Yeah. So Jeff Hoffman.
Oh, he's one of my best buds. I love Jeff.
Jeff Hoffman was a guest on our podcast.
Yep.
And I don't know if you've heard his life story.
Yep.
But Jeff is the walking personification of the 3 C's.
Exactly.
So he goes to Yale. He grew up. He was born into a single mom with 4 kids. Yeah, 4 kids and 3 jobs. Right. Wanted to go to Yale, in the worst way. Gets into Yale. Scholarships, grants, the whole thing. The first day of class, they tell him he can't go to school there. And he asked them why. And they said, because there's still a balance. Even after all the grants and all the financial aid, everything that you put together, there's still a balance on your account. So he has two options. One is he can run back home to mama in Arizona where you live, right? Or he can stay and he can figure it out. He moves into the basement of Yale University and starts a software company. Never written a line of code in his life. Okay? Starts a software company and uses that software company to pay for his 4-year education at Yale University.
There's one more point.
What an amazing story.
It is a great, true. You got everything right. And one more point that I want to make sure you get, and that is the president calls him in the office and says, you can't do that. He says, wait a second, I'm a business major.
Yeah.
You want me to go out and make money later? And I've got 20 people that are making more than living wages that all can afford to pay your ridiculous fees.
Yeah.
And one other guy from Yale we got to talk about, and that is, I'll help you get on, is Dr. Ben Carson. He's one of our closest.
Oh, I love Ben Carson.
Horatio. Here's the best thing. Ben did 15,000 pediatric neurosurgeries. No kids died. But the best thing, his mother was totally illiterate and used to grade his papers and make go to the library and get 2 things. And he didn't know she couldn't read. But at 89 years old, she just got her PhD that Ben paid for with his wife.
Sweet. I love that.
I mean, that's why I love your show, because you're willing to do the stories that nobody is willing to do, because that isn't news. It isn't.
Well, I love people. I know you can't tell because I hide it well, but I love people and I love their stories. You know, I love to hear where they came from, right? Like you've mentioned Elon Musk. I don't know if you've read his biography that Walter Isaacson wrote. What a story. Oh my goodness gracious. And the thing that I love the most about Elon Musk is how much he reminds me of my granddad.
Yeah.
My granddad had an 8th grade education. And the man was an American success story. He went from being a sharecropper to being a millionaire. He was an American success story in oil. He was an oil man, right? The way he became an oil man was he was a farmer that owned a piece of land that had 11 oil wells on it. And this oil company comes to him and says, listen, we have to give you notice as courtesy. We're not going to be servicing these wells anymore. So we're going to cap them. We're going to pull all the pumping units off of the tank batteries and all that. And you're going to basically be able to farm the service roads and everything, right? We just wanted to let you know. And my grandfather said, well, why are you pulling the pumping units off? Why are you not servicing them? He says, well, we've grown so big that they don't produce enough for me. Well, what do they produce? So the gentleman tells him. And he says, well, what if I bought the mineral rights and the equipment from you, right? And you didn't have to take it off. What would that'd save you money? What would that cost? And he said, I don't know. So he goes back to corporate, comes back, gives my grandfather a number, and my grandfather paid it.
Good for him.
Buys the equipment and literally owned it for like 50 years. Okay. And so he made millions, literally made millions, and he had an 8th grade education. But this was a man that people would seek out to find out what he thought the oil market would do, or what he thought the cattle market would do, that kind of thing. He was an expert in what he did, right? The thing about it was, my grandfather is somebody that just figured it out. It didn't matter what the situation was. It didn't matter what the challenge was or what happened. He just figured out how to make it work, right? Literally figured out how to make it work. And that was one of the things that I love, the fact that he always thought about things in terms of how can I, right? It's about the questions you ask yourself. If you ask yourself better questions, you're going to get better answers. Guaranteed. So
let's do 2 subpoints. Number 1, he became an expert. Number 2, he figured it out. Every one of us is here to become an expert at something.
Absolutely.
That's what your destiny is. And the way to get to that is this: the question before you go to sleep at night, 101 times you push back, the dog's not barking, the wife's not talking, the spouse isn't, or spouse, kids aren't crying. And you say 101 times, what's your destiny for me? What's my destiny? And the first person, or if you're Godful, you say, God, what is your destiny for me? What is my destiny, God? What is my destiny? Some iteration of that question.
Right.
And in the middle of the night, you're going to wake up. You had better have an ink pen ready, turn on the light, or walk out of the room and leave your spouse asleep and write it down. Now, we did that to find the title for Chicken Soup. When Jack and I sat at my house, my jacuzzi. We wrote 134 titles. None of them. I said, Jack, we were drinking wine and having a good time, and we always didn't do. But I said, it isn't right. So in our respective homes, I was in Newport Beach, he was in Santa Barbara. Let's go through it, and we'll do it. And 2:58 in the morning in 1989, sorry. He calls, and my little daughter was becoming a veterinarian at the time, and we had 88 animals on an acre. Not a good idea in Newport Beach, but she could heal anything, she thought, and did. So the dogs are barking, the chickens are going crazy, everybody's cats, everything. Jack says chicken soup. I said for the soul, and we had it. Now 144 publishers didn't think we had it, but we got goosebumps and knew we had it. It's like, when we hit a title that's that, goosebumps in my language, or goosebumps, God bumps, cherry bumps, chili bumps, are instantaneous truth corroboration. We're spelling it with a big T.
Yeah. And it's if you seek it, you'll find it, right? When the student's ready, the teacher will appear. Right.
And ask those three letters. Ask, seek, and find.
That's it. That's it right there. So how did you meet Jack Canfield?
We're both talking to 6,000 people down in San Diego, in your home city there, and having a time of our life. And I had not met Dr. Canfield yet. And Jack was on first, and I watched him and watched everybody during the day. But somehow, with 6,000 people, and I was a minor, I'd already sold like 370,000 copies of a book called Dare to Win. And we were with Hay House, and we're just, all of us were, the speakers were all there. Anyhow, I finished my talk, and Jack had never heard me, and comes up to me after I'd signed a gazillion books and said, do you know me? I said, yeah, you're Dr. Jack Canfield. You sold 170,000 copies of How to Build Self-Esteem in a Classroom, and you're third in your class at Harvard. And I went through his whole, because I'm like you, I'm a bio nut. I love biography, and everyone's got one.
Yeah.
Now, most of us have never written. There's two levels of biography I think you got to have. One is, what have you done? And two is, what do you want to do before you transition?
Yeah.
Right. Most people never do number one, much less number two. Yeah. Right. And
I totally agree.
What?
I totally agree.
Yeah. So we had a Vulcan mind meld like that. And then we decided to do the book, and we're both, I was on the board of Inside Edge at that time. And I said, I want you to come on the board with Wayne Dyer and Deepak Chopra and all of us. And then one morning at breakfast, he came with the 65 stories I'd written. And he said, I want to do a book. And I said, you can't do it. I wrote them. I own the copyright on all that stuff, unless you do it with me. And I thought, well, what a cool idea. I didn't go to Harvard. I couldn't, in undergraduate, I didn't even try to go to Harvard. I don't think I could have gotten in. Later on, they want me to teach there. And I got invited by the guy who wrote Who Moved My Cheese, Spencer, Dr. Spencer. Hansen. And I said, what do you pay? He said, 60. I said, you mean a month? He said, no, a year. I said, my overhead starts at $2 million just for that. I had 397 staff. I said, I run a $100 million company. I said, what do I get? He said, prestige. I said, my staff can't eat prestige. and while
very hard to cash prestige checks.
Yeah, maybe next lifetime you'll get paid.
Yeah. Where's the landlord that'll rent space to you for prestige? Right?
I don't know him or her. If you take an office, no, I don't want an office again. I've had that, done that, been there, and we're in heaven. I mean, my wife and I doing exactly what we want with whom we want, doing interviews with great people like you, having a ball.
Thank you, sir.
And the beneficiary of what we're doing today is not you and not me. Yeah. It's people that are listening, because they're going to go, wait a second. These guys said you should study biography.
We hope you enjoyed another episode of the Mike Litton Experience. If you did, do us a favor, smash that subscribe button, tell your friends, family, and coworkers about our program, and wherever you get your podcasts, please leave us a rating. It helps us to connect with quality people just like you.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at Litton Realty. Want to meet with Mike? Check out calendly.com/Rio760.